The horror genre is something that has been gaining a lot of traction as of late, or maybe that's just my limited exposure on the internet kicking in. From classics such as Five Nights at Freddy's and Dead by Daylight, to more contemporary picks such as Lethal Company and Content Warning, the horror genre is bursting with new content. However, there is something of a new trend taking place that is taking the internet by storm: cooperative horror. Now, if you're not living under a rock and your name isn't Patrick Star, the SpongeBob character and not the makeup artist, you most likely know what I'm talking about. I've mentioned Lethal Company and Content Warning before, but games like Phasmophobia and Resident Evil 5 also count under this genre, and I wanted to talk about it. Now, this is very different from my brand of content. Horror doesn't necessarily come to mind when you think about cute animal mascots, unless you read the Pokédex entries, but I think this is a valuable topic to talk about, as it is very topical and I've very recently gotten into a whole lot of this genre. I'm fine, it's not a hostage situation, I'm not addicted, I can quit anytime. Now, before we get into the video, I would like to give a bit of a warning, as these games are a bit more mature than the games I normally talk about on this channel, so if you are a bit squeamish to that kind of stuff, or if your grandma's watching YouTube with you, then feel free to click off this video now. I would also like to give a big shout out to my friends and lovely partner, as without them, I wouldn't have been able to play a lot of these games. And yes, I do indeed get bitches. And with that out of the way, let's get into the metaphorical meat of this video. Or I guess, dead meat if you wanted to make a pun, but why would you? While the games in this genre all have varying gameplay focuses and mechanics, often they share a similar formula. Explore something, try not to die, escape from whatever horrors lie in the place you are in, and leave without learning a thing of value, as you'll inevitably go back into another haunted place. Often, but not always, these games give very little in the way of allowing the players to fight back against the horrors that they face. If they are given methods, it's almost never something that can directly stop the horrors from coming back. While things like zombies can be easily disposed of, there's just going to be more of them. And in the case of a singular entity, often the methods of fighting back against it is figuring out what it is or running away like a little sissy baby. The horror genre thrives off the fear of the unknown, and so games in this genre give very little in the way of information on the threats you face along the way. The monsters in Lethal Company are a very good example, as you don't get information on them until after you encounter them, and you'd have to survive the encounter first without any information. Or you could just be lame like me and either look it up first or ask your friends what they know. That segues beautifully into what makes these games unique in the horror genre: the cooperative aspect. Now, when initially looking at cooperative horror, I know at least I was a bit skeptical about it. I mean, when you have friends like mine who don't take a whole lot seriously, and I say that lovingly, how do you get genuine horror out of it? And how do you make such experiences enjoyable enough to where people like me, who have had absolutely zero interest in horror before, suddenly want to share it with their friends and experience it for themselves? Well, ultimately my answer is a bit more personal than I'd like, so it might not apply to everyone. But I think it really just has to do with the fact that nothing really was taken that seriously. While individually we might have gotten a few scares, it was not nearly as bad to get scared, because there was the comfort of knowing that I would get a whole lot of laughs during and after the encounter. Sure, scary things never feel nice to have happen to you, and adrenaline is never a nice feeling, but speaking as someone who has terrible anxiety and is very afraid of things like roller coasters, having my friends and loved ones there with me was the push I needed to feel safer and enjoy the experience more. Now, I'm sure this had to do with my mental state at the time. I am in a much better place than I was back when I was younger, and had I been in a state where my anxiety was at an all-time high and I was constantly on edge, I probably wouldn't enjoy being put through more stress. And if this does sound like you, please do not put yourself through that unless you're using it as some sort of exposure therapy. But since I was able to sort of rely on other people to help me in a time of desperation, the horror never really got to me. Sure, it was scary, and there was always a looming dread over me when I played, but that's the whole point of the horror genre. It's really just a build-up and release. If it was all jump scares and no build-up, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it at all, even if it was with friends and loved ones. And I'm sure other people have felt this too, as there are countless videos on cooperative horror being made recently, which again leads me to my next topic. Even if you are someone who doesn't have many friends, you can still experience these games for yourself through the experiences of streamers and content creators. Genuinely, I think that's how many of these games have got so far. Viewers can share in the experiences of these big influencers and get a scare or a laugh, depending on how things go. I liken it to watching a horror movie. While such things might never happen to you in real life, hopefully, often shared experiences and immersion are strong enough to make you feel like you're really there, and that's a very powerful thing in the horror genre. This is a brief side tangent that will ultimately loop back into the main point, but like in any other fictional genre, horror thrives on the reader, viewer, or player being fully immersed in the story. If you don't get immersion, then your observer won't get that same fear factor that you're going for, which is kind of the whole point of horror. That's why I love games like Lethal Company and Phasmophobia, since they have their own integrated proximity voice chat systems. It really makes you feel like you're there in that world, instead of just being on a call with your friends on Discord. And when the mic is also used in the mechanics of the game itself, it really adds to the immersion factor. Now, a simple act such as talking affects the world around you, and communication, one of the things that would kill most terrible horror movies, is suddenly a potential detriment. Those are just my thoughts though, and this isn't by any means a formal essay, or anything. Hell, the amount of snarky jokes I snuck in probably would make this paper a B- in any stretch of the imagination, but I hope you got a kick out of it as much as I did. The horror genre is something that not everyone can enjoy, and that's okay. Not everyone enjoys being scared, and some people suffer from conditions that horror would only worsen. But I hope I've illustrated why cooperative horror is one of the best subgenres, especially in the past few years. So what are your thoughts on games like Lethal Company and Dead by Daylight? Let me know in the comments down below. Also be sure to like and subscribe, as I try to make high quality content every so often. And with that being said, I'll see you all in the next video.